Hello, fictional. Welcome to the What If Issei. Today we are gonna see what if Issei is born the White Dragon Emperor Part 2. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. The sudden push. Master, a familiar voice wafts into Issei's ears. Master. Feeling his head on something soft, Issei opens his eyes, momentarily wondering where he is as his eyes come into focus, taking in the familiar side of the ceiling of the Occult Research Club. And the not-so-familiar side of Yuuma looking down at him, a worried smile on her face. Fallen angel. Not remembering everything that happened before he passed out, Issei scrambles away from Yuuma, the White Dragon Emperor practically jumping off of the sofa and to his feet, Yuuma watching him get to his feet, Issei's fear clear as he stares at Yuuma sitting on the sofa, her expression curious. Master? Yuuma asks, Issei blinking in surprise at her referring to him with such respect, her tone like when she'd originally asked him out on a date, back when Issei had been blissfully ignorant. Issei mutters, his stance relaxing. Master. Sitting on the sofa, Yuuma appears as she did when Issei first met her, save for the fact that she's now dressed in the girl's uniform for Kuo Academy. Would you prefer if I referred to you differently? Yuuma asks, and Issei breaks eye contact with her, feeling uncomfortable carrying out a casual conversation with a woman who tried to murder him. Just call me Issei, Issei replies, and Yuuma nods. As you wish, Issei-sama. Yuuma replies. Still not looking at her, Issei can't shake the discomfort the young devil feels festering in his stomach. Why are you talking to me like that? Issei asks, and Yuuma blinks in surprise. Why wouldn't I speak to you like this? Yuuma asks, slowly standing up. You saved my life. Every day I'm alive now I owe to you. But Issei mutters, remembering everything that happened before he passed out. You're my slave now. Nodding, Yuuma doesn't deny Issei's statement. I am your slave, Issei-sama. Yuuma admits freely. I will do anything you ask me to do without question. Hearing her admitting to it, Issei doesn't feel the surge of joy and happiness he thought he'd feel hearing a beautiful woman say that. Being a teenage boy with a raging libido, Issei has always dreamed of actually having a sex slave like in the Aero games he plays on his computer late at night after his parents go to bed. Talking with his two friends, Issei always thought he would revel in having a beautiful, big-breasted woman to do whatever he wanted with. Really? Issei half asks, his discomfort and disbelief coloring in his tone. Give me an order, Issei-sama. Yuuma replies, and Issei blinks in surprise. Let me grope your breasts. Issei replies. Not knowing if she'll agree, Issei very nearly falls over in surprise when Yuuma starts walking toward him. Covering the distance between them in a moment, Yuuma reaches out, ever so gently taking his hand in hers, raising it up to her chest, and then pressing it against her breast. Holy mother of boobs. His fingers against her soft bosom, Issei unconsciously curls his fingers around her flesh, softly squeezing Yuuma's right breast. A small moan wafts out of her lips, Yuuma's face contorting in shame and pleasure as Issei ever so slowly gropes her breast. Oh Kami, she's letting me squeeze her breasts. Feeling a small amount of blood escaping his nose, Yuuma looks away from him, her voice tinged with embarrassment. Are you satisfied with this, Issei-sama? Issei mumbles, completely engrossed by the fact that he's actually groping a woman's breasts and she isn't trying to bash his head in as a result. Her fingers falling from his, Issei lowers his hand, Yuuma turning her head back toward him. Do you have any other orders, Issei-sama? Yuuma asks, and Issei feels torn. Part of him wants to tell her to take off her clothes and let him bury his face in her breasts. Another part of them though is more than a little uncomfortable with the prospect of doing anything with the woman who betrayed and tried to kill him. No, Issei shakes his head, turning his gaze away from her. How long was I unconscious? For roughly 6 hours. Yuuma explains to him. Ryusama thought it was best that you remain here until you regained consciousness. So she just let the fallen angel that betrayed me and tried to kill me carry me back to the club room, alone. What about Asia-chan? Issei asks. Ryusama had me carry you back here before she spoke with Asia-san. Yuuma explains to him. Neither she nor Ryusama has returned here since then. Frowning, Issei sighs, feeling a modicum of relief. With the fallen angels dealt with, Asia will be free to do whatever she wants. With her healing ability she could do untold amounts of good in the world, helping people without anything to do with the church. A part of Issei hopes that Asia goes out into the world and enjoys her life, another part of him though is sad that he'll likely never see her again. Are you distressed, Issei-sama? Yuuma asks, and Issei blinks in surprise, his head snapping back to her. Issei mumbles, not sure how to phrase what he wants to ask her. I'm your slave. Yuuma answers him. Your blood flows inside me, connecting me to you. Opening his mouth to reply, Issei doesn't know what to say to that, instead the young devil simply allows his mouth to hang up in a moment before closing his mouth again. And you're alright with that? Issei asks. You hated me, even tried to kill me. Issei continues. Now you're speaking to me like you care about me. Her face contorting in a frown, Yuma looks down toward the floor. Before I drank your blood, I did feel that way, Yuma explains to him. But when I swallowed your blood, it hurt so much. Then when the pain faded and I saw you hanging there unconscious, I felt so worried. Hearing her explaining what happened after he passed out, Issei doesn't know what to think. For him, the change in Rainer is such a stark shift that he doesn't know how it's even possible. To him, Rainer went from wanting to chop his head off to ready to take his virginity if he asked her to. So what now? Issei asks. Blinking, Yuma looks up at him, cocking her head to the side curiously. What do you mean, Issei-sama? Yuma asks. Mentally smacking himself, Issei balls his hands into fists. I mean, what are you planning to do now? Issei asks. Yuma begins slowly. I'd like to stay by your side. The implications of that hitting Issei like a ton of bricks. Issei stares at Yuma, shock playing across his features. You mean like at my house? Issei asks, and Yuma nods. I'd like to share your bed as well, if I can, Yuma replies demurely, Issei momentarily envisioning Yuma in lingerie lying next to him, the girl wearing a black see-through teddy that barely hides her body. Issei giggles, his hands unconsciously rising, Issei making a groping motion with his hands, Issei hearing Yuma in his mind. Ravish me, Issei-sama. Issei hears the words in his head. Issei-sama? Yuma asks, her voice snapping Issei out of his delusion, Issei quickly shaking his head to clear it. I'm fine. Issei assures her, half turning away from her. If you want to have sex with me, I don't mind. Yuma replies, and Issei falls face first on the floor. Issei-sama? Yuma moving to see if he's alright. Issei pushes himself up to his hands and knees, Issei mumbling as he does. Now my face, Issei complains. I'm so sorry, Issei-sama. Yuma's voice reaches his ears, Issei feeling a pair of arms grasp him by the shoulders before his face is pressed against something soft and warm. For just a moment Issei has no idea what is going on. Then the realization hits him that Yuma is holding his face against her breasts. Boobs. Unable to believe what is happening, Issei is about to start moving his head back and forth when the door to the hall opens, the sound of Ria's voice carrying. Issei, are you? Ria's trails, taking in the side of Issei with his head buried in Yuma's chest. Oh my, Akeno speaks up. You're a fast mover, aren't you, Issei-kun? Issei-san, a very familiar voice calls out to him, the sound of her voice flushing any perverted thoughts out of Issei's mind. Asia. Issei pulling back, Yuma allows him to stand up, the fallen angel in human form, watching her master scramble to his feet, Issei turning toward Ria's, Akeno and Asia. This isn't what it looks like. Issei tries to explain, taking in the sight of the frown on Ria's lips, the curious look on Asia's face and the grin on Akeno's. So you weren't just about to bury your face in your slave's breasts? Riaz asks sarcastically, and Issei grins uncomfortably, reaching up and scratching the back of his head in embarrassment. That's Issei mumbles, not sure how to respond to Ria's summary of the situation. Issei-sama fell because of me. Yuma comes to Issei's defense. I was just trying to comfort him. Sure, Riaz replies sarcastically. Anyway, now that you're both awake, we can finally explain the current state of things. Akeno closing the door to the hall. Riaz walks toward her desk, the red-haired devil leaning against it as every other pair of eyes in the room follow her. The state of things? Issei asks, and Riaz nods. The battle with the fallen angels went well, but things have changed as a result. Riaz explains to him. You enslaved the fallen angel Rainer, and Asia Argento has asked to join my family. Blinking, Issei turns his gaze to Asia, the White Dragon Emperor, only now noticing that Asia now wears the girl's uniform of Kuo Academy, like Riaz and Akeno and Yuma. You want to be a devil, Asia-chan? Issei asks, and the blonde nun bobs her head in affirmation. Yes, she answers, looking at Issei a moment before Riaz speaks, once again drawing the attention of the room to her. Asia has become my second bishop. Riaz explains. Both she and your slave have asked to live with you, Issei. Blinking, Issei's face falls in disbelief. Both of them living with me? There's no way my parents would go for that. But my parents? Issei replies, and Riaz smiles at him. I can handle them. Riaz replies. The real question is, do you want them both living with you? Riaz asks. Blinking, Issei lowers his gaze, a somber looking settling in his eyes. They're both only involved with me because I was too weak, Issei thinks to himself. If I were stronger, I could have just killed Rainer and saved Asia before I put everyone else in danger. Yes, Issei agrees. If that's what they both want, then who I am to say no? Then it's settled then. Riaz agrees, both Asia and Rainer feeling relief wash over them with Issei's agreement. Neither of them wants to be away from him. Though both of them have their own reasons for wanting to do so. Rainer wants to make him happy, and if that means sharing his bed and fulfilling his perverted desires, then she will gladly do it. Asia on the other hand doesn't trust Rainer with Issei, and Issei is her first friend. No one has ever treated her like Issei has, and she wants to be around him more. Well, once school ends we'll go back to your house and arrange things. Riaz explains, Issei sighing heavily. Oh, yippee. Sitting in his homeroom class, Issei sits with his right elbow on the desk, his face falling into his open palm. Why me? In front of the class both Asia and Yuma stand next to one another, their names written behind them on the board, identifying both of them. Class, this is Asia Argento and Yuma Amano. They'll both be transferring in starting today. The teacher introduces them both. Check it out. Mitsuda can barely remain in his seat. A blonde beauty and a brunette with big breasts. Ever since Issei regained consciousness, Rainer's human form has had much larger breasts than when he'd first met her. While Rainer's are larger, they're much more pronounced than they were before, and Issei has no idea why she would change. What I wouldn't give to bury my face in their bosom and just motorboat them both at the same time. Motohama comments, and Issei can't bring himself to join in. Sighing, Issei just closes his eyes, wishing that this day would just end. Issei Mitsuda speaks up, turning his attention toward the young devil. Why aren't you staring? You love big-breasted girls. Suspicion coloring his friend's tone, Issei pulls his head from his hand tiredly. I'm just really tired today, Mitsuda, Issei replies. Sensei, would it be possible if I could sit next to Hyoudou Issei? Yuma asks, and Motohama blinks in surprise. Yo Issei, why is she asking to sit next to you? Motohama asks, and Issei drops his head back into his hand. No, this isn't happening. Me too. Asia speaks up quickly. I want to sit next to Issei-sen too. Kill me now. Heading through school is like walking through a minefield. Both Asia and Yuma integrate rather easily, the girls of the class welcoming them happily, while many of the guys in the class try to ask one or both of them out. Being a blonde, Asia has an exotic draw, since not many Japanese girls have blonde hair. On the other hand, Yuma also receives her fair share of male attention, her breasts and more traditional appearance likely attracting potential suitors. Then Asia said that she was going to be living with him. Mitsuda had grabbed him by the collar and shook him like a British nanny shakes a crying baby. Very nearly screaming at Issei, both Mitsuda and Motohama were ready to skin him alive when Yuma had said she too was going to be living under the same roof as him. When that came out, the girls of the class both flocked to Asia and Yuma, telling both of them to be diligent and check the bathroom for hidden cameras and be watchful when they're in the bathroom or showering or changing, because Issei will try to peep on them. Somehow Issei had managed to escape the situation with his skin intact, and now he stands with his bookcase held in his left hand, his uniform jacket hanging open, a silver shirt underneath the jacket. He had been wearing a red shirt before, but Albion had commented that morning that he didn't like the color, as it reminds him of his rival. Shrugging it off, Issei just grabbed a silver shirt from the rack and pulled it on. In front of him, Ria smiles, her red hair slowly swinging back and forth as she walks, Yuma and Asia walking behind him, Issei sighing tiredly. Oh man, what are my parents going to think when two girls ask to live with us? He's asked Riaz not to hypnotize his parents unless she absolutely has to, and as the four of them walk back to his home, Issei can't imagine any scenario which doesn't end with Riaz hypnotizing both of his parents into allowing both Asia and Rainer to live with him. Issei-sama, are you alright? Yuma asks, suddenly right next to him, Issei very nearly screaming in surprise, the young devil almost tripping over his own feet in surprise. Ah. Issei starts, waving his hands around. Yuma's face contorted in concern. Issei doesn't reply right away, the disguised fallen angel leaning forward slightly when Issei jumped back, Yuma's curiosity at her master's reaction plastered all over her face like a billboard. Something wrong, Issei? Riaz asks casually, half turned back toward Issei and the others, Issei quickly shaking his head, recovering his composure. It's nothing but you. Issei replies stoically. Her lips press together in a thin line. Riaz turns back around, starting down the street again with the three of them following behind her. Mom, Dad, this is Asia Argento and Yuma Amano. Hyoudou Issei begins awkwardly, both young women standing before Issei's mother and father. Sitting on their sofa, the two middle-aged humans stare in shock at the two girls standing in front of them. Growing up, their son has made no point to conceal his perverted tendencies, and they'd believed that he was never going to get a girlfriend so long as he continued to act as he was. Now they have two attractive young women asking to stay with them. Both are wearing the Kuo Academy girls' uniform, Asia standing with her hands folded on her lap, her blue eyes calm and clear, her hair hanging behind her. Like Asia, Yuma wears her hair down, though she stands with her hands in front of her, her fingers fidgeting nervously as Issei's parents contemplate allowing both she and Asia to live under the same roof as him. Like Asia, she desperately doesn't want to be separated from Issei, though her motivations are very different from Asia. Unlike the blonde devil, Rainer is bound to Issei and owes him her life and can never live down that debt, no matter what she does. Of course you'll be compensated for the extra cost. A woman's voice speaks up, Issei standing off to the right of the two currently seeking to live in his home, the third female voice standing off to their left. Long red hair and matching eyes make it clear that she's not from Japan, though her figure is one that many young girls would kill for. Speaking in a refined, ladylike manner, Ria's Gremory is the epitome of everything their son Issei isn't. Looking at her, she seems to give off an air of aristocracy and grace, something Issei is sorely lacking. Issei, his father, begins slowly, turning his attention toward his son. You didn't get both of these women pregnant, did you? Falling on his face, Issei can't believe his father just said what he said. The implication in his question settling on Asia, her face turns a shade of red, Yuma following suit, though her blush isn't nearly as heavy. Chuckling lightly, Riaz can't help the grin that comes to her lips, Issei slowly crawling back to his feet, the young demon pulling his head up above his parents' coffee table. Otu-san, Issei mumbles, and Riaz clears her throat. I assure you your son has been nothing but a gentleman to both of these young ladies. Riaz explains for him. This is more of a request from me, not him. Both of Issei's parents sharing a momentary glance, neither of them shakes their head in denial. Riaz watching them both, the high-class demon knowing enough to be able to read both of the humans. Riaz nearly sure that they're going to agree to house both Asia and Yuma. We would be honored, Gremory-san. Issei's father answers her as he turns his head toward her. Smiling, Riaz bows lightly toward both of Issei's parents. Thank you both very much. Riaz offers earnestly, Issei pulling himself to his feet. Then I'll show both of you young ladies to your rooms. Issei's mother volunteers, standing up as both Asia and Rainer nod their heads in agreement. Fortunately for Issei, his parents bought a 5-bedroom home, his parents sharing one bedroom while Issei occupies the other. The intent had been for Issei to have a younger sibling, but his parents never bothered to conceive another child, the last bedroom reserved as a guest bedroom for anyone looking to spend the night. Now both Asia and Rainer will be occupying the bedrooms. Follow me. Issei's mother volunteers, the woman walking toward the stairs, both Asia and Rainer following her, leaving Issei and Riaz alone in the living room with his father. I'm going to go take a shower, his father explains, the man standing up and heading for the steps as well. His father ascending the steps behind Rainer. Issei watches them go, his expression suspicious as the rest of his family disappears up the steps. Riaz momentarily silent, her gaze settling on her only pawn. Feeling relieved? Riaz asks, and Issei sighs tiredly. Regret, Issei counters, and Riaz giggles playfully. Really? You're regretting having a fallen angel slave that can't disobey you? Riaz counters, and Issei shakes his head. I'm going to be living with Asia-chan and her now. Issei replies. So? Riaz asks. So Asia is someone I have to protect. Issei replies with a shrug. I can't put my hands on her. And Rainer? Riaz asks astutely, Issei's lips turning down in a scowl. She tried to kill me, and I only did what I did because I thought I might get some enjoyment out of it, but now. Well, she's bound to you now. Riaz replies. Can't take it back. Did you hear how I had to spend my day at school? Issei asks, and Riaz grins. I may have heard a rumor or two about your friends nearly putting you in the nurse's office. They were really thrilled when they found out that the two of them were going to be living with me. Well, I've got a job for you tonight. Riaz explains to him, and Issei blinks in surprise. A job? Issei asks. I thought I was still just passing out flyers. Not tonight. Riaz explains, shaking her head in denial. You're going to try and get a contract tonight, and I'm going with you. Blinking, Issei's eyes go wide at that. You're coming with me? Issei blurts out in surprise, and Riaz nods. I'm going to help you finally get a contract. Riaz affirms, and Issei narrows his eyes. But if you offered me a reward, I'd be much more motivated to land a contract, Issei suggests, and Riaz cocks her head to the side. Reward? Riaz asks, and Issei nods, cocking his arms at his elbows, leaning forward eagerly. What would you like? Let me grope your breasts. Issei blurts out, a part of him thinking that Riaz will shoot the request down, but he has to try. Momentarily silent, Riaz raises her right pointer finger to her chin, a thoughtful look settling on her features a moment, the red-haired devil considering her servant's proposition. Alright. Riaz agrees, and Issei practically beams with joy. Really, Issei practically jumps out of his skin. Yes. Riaz replies with a nod. Awesome. Issei practically screams with joy. All I have to do is get a contract and I can grope Butchu's rocking rack. That night, Issei and Riaz appear before a foreign exchange student clad in samurai armor. She was apparently going to a nearby university and she'd forgotten her notebook and was scared to go back to get it alone. So he'd accompanied her back and she'd retrieved her notes, only to ask if they would help her with a second request. Issei had tried to turn it down, but Riaz had agreed, and the two of them together helped the strange girl to send a love letter to the guy she has a crush on. Oddly enough, the apple of her eye is a man obsessed with English knight armor. Watching the two of them walk off together, Issei feels exhausted, the young pawn incredibly relieved that the request is over, and Susan signed the contract. This means I get to get my hands on Butchu's breasts. It's like they were made for each other, Ria speaks, snapping Issei out of his lecherous thoughts. I guess, Issei offers noncommittally. Do you believe in love, Issei? Riaz asks, and Issei blinks in surprise at the question. Love? Issei asks, and Riaz half turns toward him, her gaze piercing. Ah yeah. Smiling at Issei's answer, Riaz faces him with her body, her expression taking on a forlorn tone that Issei can't place. Two people finding one another, living their lives together, Riaz trails. It's like a dream. Why would she be talking like that? But you? Issei asks, and Riaz blinks, her gaze returning to its more cheerful norm. We should head back, we've had a long day. Riaz explains and Issei nods. I'm right behind you. Coming back to the club room, Issei is alone with Riaz, the club room otherwise empty when the two of them appear from the Gremory circle. Walking to her desk, Riaz is all business. Well, now that that's finished, Riaz trails, and Issei doesn't wait. But you, about that promise. Issei begins, and Riaz stops, turning to face him with her body, the red-haired devil cocking her head to the side curiously. Promise? Riaz asks, and Issei nods. You said if I got a contract I could grope your breasts. Issei blurts out quickly, impatience in his voice. Smiling, Riaz leans against the front of her desk, the president of the Occult Research Club, not at all surprised by her pawn's memory. He does have an obsession with breasts, after all. All right, Riaz agrees, lowering her arms to her sides. I remember. Barely able to contain his joy, Issei is just about ready to jump out of his skin. Really, I can touch your breasts? Yes, Riaz begins. However, only from when I start counting, and only until I count to 10. Riaz clarifies for him. So 1, Riaz begins, and Issei blinks in surprise. Crap. She's already started counting. 2, Riaz counts, and Issei's thoughts run. What do I do? How do I go about touching them? Should I squeeze her nipples, or maybe just cup them in my hands? 3, Riaz continues. Oh man. I've already wasted 3 seconds. I can't let this chance slip by. I have to do something. 4. Don't just stand there. If you want to touch her breasts, then touch them. Don't think about it. Albion growls in his head, the heavenly dragon's irritation clear to his current host. He's right. 5, Riaz counts, now halfway through Issei's allotted time. Choosing to follow Albion's advice, Issei sticks his hands out, his fingers wrapping around Ria's sweater cows, and even through the fabric of her school uniform, Issei can feel how soft her skin is, like his fingers are literally being sucked in. 6, Riaz mumbles, her cheeks turning red as Issei touches her voice carrying a hint of embarrassment and arousal. Hearing her voice, everything that is going on in that moment hits Issei like a ton of bricks. I'm groping the breasts of the most beautiful girl in school, and they're awesome. 7, Riaz continues, the count coming half a beat slower than the prior 6 in the sequence. Blood spewing from his nose, Issei stops moving his hands, the young breast aficionado falling backward and hitting the floor, blood streaming down his face with his hands held in the air, his eyes like small whirlpools. Butchu's breasts, Issei mutters over and over again, Riaz stopping her count as her pawn lies on the floor, mumbling to himself. Her cheeks still red, Riaz looks away from him, her voice coming out in a small pout. Baka, Riaz mutters, a part of her disappointed that Issei stopped touching her, though she would be loath to admit it. But the initial shock of Yuma and Asia transferring in passed, the next day is much more normal. After Riaz fulfilled her part of the promise, Riaz simply called Asia and Yuma, the two of them coming to the club room to collect their roommate, Issei still mumbling to himself. Though thankfully he was only mumbling nonsense when the two of them arrived. When asked about it by Asia, Riaz simply said that she'd fulfilled Issei's request and it was time for him to go home. It wasn't until later that night that he'd finally come back to his senses, and with Rainer around, Asia was unwilling to leave Issei alone with her, in spite of her seemingly changed attitude. Over the following week, the newly reincarnated devils and the now enslaved fallen angel develop a routine. In the morning, both Asia and Rainer, in Yuma form, come into his room to wake him up without knocking. Once Issei is awake, he gets dressed and ready for the day, eating breakfast with them all before walking to school. School itself becomes much more normal, each day becoming more and more routine, though both Asia and Yuma both get their fair share of masculine attention, though Rainer on more than one occasion almost admits that she is in fact Issei's slave and will do whatever he orders her to do. Without question. Seeing how well Issei gets along with both Asia and Yuma, both Mitsuda and Motohama start asking Issei for help for their friend to introduce the two of them to a girl or two. Thinking about it, Issei had the perfect girl in mind, and as a reward, Motohama showed Issei his newly discovered VIP lounge. Said lounge also just so happened to be a locker in the girls' changing room. Unfortunately for Issei, Kaneko happened to be changing when he and the other two members of the perverted trio were in the locker, and the white-haired devil didn't miss Issei's peeping. He wound up back in the club room as more or less one big bruise, with Asia healing him. "Don't waste your time, Asia," Kaneko advises the healer, Asia choosing to ignore the statement while Rainer looks on, still in her human disguise. "If you wanted to see a naked girl, Issei-senpai, you only had to tell me." Rainer explains to him, the girl reaching down and grasping her blouse, moving to pull it and show her body to him when Issei speaks out. "That's okay." Issei blurts out, fear in his voice. Kaneko sitting on one of the sofas in club room, eating a snack, glaring at him with a murderous look in her eyes. Issei, Asia mutters, unable to stop her healing, in spite of the fact that she wants him to know that she feels the same way. If you want to see a girl naked, you could just ask me, and I'll show you." Issei mutters, turning away. "That's okay, Asia-chan, you don't have to do that." Chewing her lower lip, Asia doesn't say anything else, instead focusing on healing Issei. "We can talk once we get back home," Asia thinks to herself. Sitting on his bed, Issei focuses, trying not to imagine either Rainer or Asia naked. "I have to keep my guard up around both of them," Issei thinks to himself. "Asia is someone I have to protect, and Rainer tried to kill me. If I let my guard down around either of them, I could end up really regretting it or dead." It's a sobering thought, and Issei doesn't want to end up once again at death's door. "Once is enough for one lifetime, thank you very much." Light shining into his closed eyelids, Issei opens his eyes, taking in the sight of a magic circle appearing on the floor in front of him. The circle, Issei mumbles, not sure what to make of what is going on as Riaz appears from the circle, wearing her school uniform. "But you?" Issei Riaz begins, reaching to her waist to remove her skirt, letting it fall before reaching for her blouse, Issei mutely, noting that Riaz is wearing white panties as she continues. "I need you to take my virginity." "What?" Issei blurts out in surprise, Ria's blouse falling from her body, revealing that she's wearing a matching bra. "I know it's sudden, but I need you to take me now." Riaz insists, reaching up to undo her bra, letting the garment fall. Her breasts. "But you, what is this about?" Issei asks, hoping for clarification. "Do you not want me?" Riaz asks, and Issei quickly shakes his head no. "No. Of course not. I just isn't this a little rushed? I know this far from ideal, but there isn't any other way." Riaz explains, pulling off her panties. "Other way?" Issei barely manages to enunciate, his eyes taking in the sight of Riaz Gremory in her birthday suit. Starting toward him, Riaz ignores the question. "I know I'm a virgin, and probably not very good, but what I want won't take much," Riaz says, and Issei swallows the saliva in his mouth as Riaz climbs on top of him. I'm a virgin too," so Issei doesn't know what to say, and Riaz smiles slightly. "Then it will be a mutual gift," Riaz says, leaning in and kissing him. Holy hell, her lips are soft. Feeling her breasts pressing against his chest through his nightshirt, Issei's body doesn't hesitate to react, and he can feel Ria's hand brush against it, the red-haired devil pulling her lips from his for a moment, her fingers finding the top of his boxers. "Well, you're ready and so am I." Her voice a throaty purr. Issei just nods, unable to believe what's about to happen. Pulling his boxers down far enough, Riaz does all the work, Issei too stunned and dumbstruck to do anything but just lie there for nearly 5 minutes. Grafia wouldn't arrive for over an hour. It doesn't take long for Issei to get the hang of things, and before long both he and Riaz are in the thrall of carnal passion. Being devils, Issei's stamina is a lot greater than what he thought, and after his short-lived first time, Issei is much more into the swing of things. As more time passes, Riaz seems to enjoy the experience more and more. After a half an hour, both Riaz and Issei are enjoying themselves. Issei unable to believe that his first time is with a woman like Riaz Gremory, while at first Riaz is happy that no one has shown up to interrupt them. Then as time goes on, as Issei tries to please her, the way he holds her, it causes a strange warm feeling inside the air to the Gremory family. After over an hour, Riaz finds herself lying atop her pawn, the both of them sweaty and tired, the blankets on Issei's bed tossed aside, neither Issei nor Riaz feeling the least bit cold. Lying beneath Riaz, Issei can feel her breasts pressing against his chest, Riaz casually coiling a lock of Issei's hair around her pointer finger on her right hand. "Having fun, but you?" Issei asks playfully, Riaz slightly frowning at Issei's referring to her by a title rather than her name. "But you?" Riaz asks pointedly. "You said my name when you were inside me." His cheeks turning red, Issei breaks eye contact with her, feeling a rush of embarrassment. "Well, Issei mumbles, not sure what to say when a magic circle appears on the floor past the foot of the Issei's bed. Seeing the light, Issei blinks in surprise, not sure what to think as a figure emerges from the center of the circle. Riaz not in the least bit surprised at the sight of the woman appearing in the room, wearing a maid outfit. Riaz sitting up with her waist near Issei's. What the two of them have done is unmistakable. Standing there, Grafia doesn't show an ounce of surprise at the sight of Riaz Gremory straddling her servant. She is rather happy that the two of them are no longer humping. She'd spent the last 20 minutes waiting outside not wanting to interrupt them mid-coitus. The sight of her sister-in-law humping is the absolute last thing Grafia wants to see. Grafia Rias offers in greeting, her familiarity clear in her voice. Grafia? Issei asks, completely clueless. Her countenance giving away nothing. Grafia stands with her arms at her sides, her voice level and cold. So you've given your virtue to your servant. Grafia begins, and Rias doesn't show an ounce of regret. I have, and I fully intend to remain with him. Rias explains, and Issei blinks in surprise. Remain with me, Issei mutters, a part of him numbly aware that what Rias just said could be interpreted as a marriage proposal. Neither your brother nor Riser Sama will be happy with this development. Grafia replies stoically. Her brother, Riser. What is she talking about? Issei thinks to himself. However, all of that can wait until tomorrow. For now, enjoy yourself. Grafia offers, bowing before disappearing just as quickly as she appeared. Blinking, Issei turns his gaze back to Rias, the red-haired devil still completely naked, a momentary somber look on her features before she turns back to him, her gaze once again playful and happy. What was that all about? Issei manages to ask, and Rias giggles playfully, suggestively pressing her breasts against his chest as she lies down atop him. Do you really want to know now, or would you rather me show you this trick I know with my tongue? Rias asks, and Issei blinks in surprise, her intent is clear as day. Does that mean she's going to? Just the thought of it has parts of his body beginning to stir, and Rias can feel it against her bare skin. Well, I'd say I have my answer. Pushing herself up to her hands and knees, Rias is about to begin moving when there's a knock at the door. Issei-san. Asia's voice carries, and Issei's eyes go wide. Oh, what fresh hell is this? But Issei mumbles, not sure what to say. He desperately doesn't want Asia to come in and interrupt. Issei-sama, Yuma's voice calls out, the door opening, Issei feeling like a 5-year-old boy with his hand caught in the cookie jar. Both Yuma and Asia stand in the doorway, Asia's cheeks turning red at what she sees, while Yuma doesn't seem the least bit surprised. Both of them wear nightgowns, Asia wearing a pure white one, while Yuma wears a dark gray one. Oh, what am I going to do? Issei thinks to himself, the young devil beginning to frantically rack his brain for an answer. Are you both just going to stand out there? Rias asks, and Issei blinks in surprise, her tone making it sound like. Does she want them both to join in? Turning toward Asia, Yuma speaks quietly, her tone filled with encouragement. Let's go, Asia-chan, Yuma says, taking Asia's hand, the dark-haired fallen angel walking into the room, Asia stumbling behind her. What but? Asia mutters as Yuma very nearly drags her into the room, Yuma closing the door behind them. You want to be with Issei-sama, don't you? Yuma asks, and Asia breaks eye contact, looking down toward the floor as Yuma turns her attention to Rias. Do you object, Rias-sama? Smiling, Rias doesn't seem the least bit upset by the suggestion. You know what they say, the more the merrier, Rias replies, and Issei feels like he's just been hit by a ton of bricks. Are you kidding me? Aren't you the charmer, Albion whispers teasingly, and Issei is about to open his mouth when Yuma takes off her nightgown. Yuma-san, Asia mutters, not sure what to do. Turning to face Asia with her body, Yuma smiles at the young blonde. You want to make Issei-sama happy, don't you? Yuma asks, and Asia slowly bobs her head. Yes, Asia answers quietly, and Yuma reaches out, touching Asia by the shoulders and turning her toward Issei and Rias, the both of them still on the bed. Then show him. Yuma offers quietly, Asia reaching for the shoulders of her nightgown, as Yuma takes her hands away, Asia pulling the lingerie from her body. This can't be happening. The next morning. His eyes fluttering open, Issei feels like his arms and legs are chained, a weight on all of his limbs and his waist holding him to the bed. His vision coming into focus, his head craning around to take in the sight of the 3 women still sharing his bed. Rias lies on his left side, Yuma on his right, Asia's head pressed against the bottom of his chest, just above his groin. Last night we. Remembering what happened, a torrent of images comes to Issei's mind. For a moment the young man doesn't believe that what happened actually happened, but then Issei looks around at the 3 women sharing his bed with him. All 3 of them naked, and it hits home that what happened the night before was not a dream. I lost my virginity and I had a 4-way with 3 women. But Suda and Motohama would never believe him. Issei has been in school with the 2 of them for years, and they've talked endlessly about having sex for the first time and about being with more than 1 woman at one time. Most of the time it was just talk, pubescent boys fantasizing about something that was obviously never going to happen. But now Issei has done those things. He's been with a woman, done just about every sexual act he can think of off the top of his head that doesn't require toys or pain. I don't feel any different. Lying there with Rias, Asia and Yuma in bed with him, Issei doesn't feel any different than he did the morning before. It was like nothing has changed inside him, in spite of the fact that he's done something that many high school boys obsess over constantly and talk about endlessly. Ria's stirring on his left. Issei can feel the red-haired devil moving against his body, the president of the occult research club, opening her eyes groggily, reaching up to wipe at them before her lips curl in a pleasant smile. "Good morning," Ria's offers warmly, Issei returning the smile. "Good morning to you too," Issei replies, and Ria's giggles. "Enjoy yourself last night?" Ria's asks playfully, and Issei nods. "Yeah," Issei answers, a hint of concern coming to his voice. "Did you?" A part of him realizes that what happened last night could very well never happen again. If Ria's didn't enjoy what happened, then Issei will very likely never even see her naked. Most human girls in high school would never even consider doing what Ria's did the night before without massive amounts of alcohol being involved. But unlike the average high school girl, Issei knows Ria's was born in the underworld, a pure-blooded devil very likely raised under a different moral code, and Issei knows exactly nothing about that. "I did." Ria smiles at him. Relief washing over him, Issei sighs in relief. "That's good," Issei trails, and Ria shifts her gaze toward Yuma and Asia, the red-haired devil pointedly glancing toward the other two women in the bed with them. "I take it you enjoyed yourself what with the two other women who were both so eager to please you?" Ria's prods, and Issei grins uncomfortably. "That's," Issei mutters, discomfort filling him with Ria's gaze centered on him. "I really did enjoy it when it was just the two of us." Smiling, Ria's lays her head on his left shoulder, her right cheek resting against his shoulder. "I did too," Ria's replies, and Issei opens his mouth to respond when the beeping of Issei's alarm cuts through their conversation. The beeping incredibly loud, both Asia and Yuma begin to stir, Issei metaphorically smacking himself in the forehead. "Oh yeah, get a harem, have zero alone time with a woman you might just have feelings for." Walking to school with Ria's, Asia and Yuma, Issei feels exhausted. Having only slept for a few hours the night before, compounded with all the exercise that he'd gotten before falling asleep, Issei is understandably tired. Surrounded by the women he'd been with the night before, Issei hasn't spoken much since waking up that morning. Fortunately, his parents must have taken some sleeping pills the night before because they were completely oblivious to the fact that their perverted devil son had sex with 3 women at the same time the night before. Eating breakfast, Issei had only spoken when spoken to, giving short curt responses. Walking with the 3 of them, Issei doesn't know how to interact with them. In the heat of the moment, everything had just sort played out. Wonder of wonders, Ria's had wanted to sleep with him, and after Grafia left, both Yuma and Asia had ended up jumping in. Asia hadn't seemed to know what she was doing, and Ria's had to educate her newest servant on what to do. Yuma, on the other hand, was more than willing, and she knew exactly what she wanted. Sighing, Issei looks up from the sidewalk in front of him, Ria's walking in front of him, her red hair swaying back and forth as she walks in front of him, Asia on his right, Yuma on his left. "But you?" Issei asks, still referring to her by her title rather than her name. In the midst of everything, her name had just sort of slipped out. Issei hadn't been thinking, and he'd just spoken. Now though, Issei's upper head has dibs on the blood supply. Frowning slightly, Ria's half turns her head to look to Issei over her right shoulder. "Yes, Issei?" Ria's asks, and Issei frowns slightly, his head lowering, the young devil breaking eye contact before he responds. "I just wanted to ask you about what Grafia-san was talking about last night." Issei explains, and Ria's blinks, her face giving away nothing before she turns her head forward again. "We can talk about that during club." Ria's replies, and Issei nods, realizing that whatever Grafia was talking about must be important. It's probably something personal to Butchu, Issei thinks to himself. On either side of him, Asia and Yuma both glance to Issei and then Ria's, the two of them thinking almost the exact same thing at the same time, the same question going through both of their minds. Who is Grafia and what connection does she have to Ria's? Unfortunately for the both of them, neither Ria's nor Issei appear willing to offer an answer, and sensing that neither Asia nor Yuma bother to press the issue, the both of them willing to wait until the Occult Research Club meets that afternoon to get an answer to that question. Arriving at Kuo Academy, Issei, Asia and Yuma all head for their homeroom, Ria's parting ways with the 3 of them, Akeno waiting for her president at the top of a staircase, the long-haired buxom woman smiling as Ria's ascends the steps. "Oh my, you were at Issei-kun's home all night," Akeno trails playfully, the vice president of the Occult Research Club far from oblivious, she knows what her master went to Issei's home to do. "Is that supposed to be a question, Akeno?" Ria's asks, and Akeno giggles. "Did you enjoy yourself last night?" Akeno asks, and Ria's half smiles. "What do you think?" Ria's asks, and Akeno grins. "Maybe I should visit Issei-kun tonight, see what all the fuss is about," Akeno pokes, and Ria's grins. "You'll have to get in line." Ria's replies, matter-of-factly waving her hand dismissively. "Oh?" Akeno asks. "Are you planning on spending another night with him, Butchu?" Akeno asks, and Ria's grins. "Even if I were, you'd still have competition from Asia and Rainer." Ria's replies. Innuendo thick in Ria's voice, Akeno's dark eyes go wide at Ria's implication. You mean the two of the Makeno trails, and Riaz nods. Just when we were about to start a second round. Riaz explains. Well, at least you had one time alone with him. Akeno replies, and Riaz closes her eyes. Not a word of this to Sona or anyone associated with her. Riaz explains to her queen. I'm going to have enough trouble dealing with that egotistic womanizer and my brother. Standing in the club room, Issei can't help but glance toward the woman standing near Butchu's desk. He hadn't gotten a good look the night before, and looking at her now, Issei can't help but think she's a beautiful woman with a really nice rack and an air of elegance about her. In spite of the fact that she currently wears a maid outfit. Standing in a line are all of Ria's servants, the red-haired princess herself standing in front of them, Issei standing between Akeno and Asia, the young pawn, not sure what to do or what is going on. The only thing Butchu would say before Grafia arrived was you'll find out soon. On the end, Kiba has the appearance of perfect calm, Rainer on his left, Asia on her left, Kaneko on the left side of Akeno. Ryasama Grafia begins calmly. You know why I'm here. I assume it's to discuss my violating the terms of my engagement. Riaz replies, and Issei blinks, feeling like he's just been slapped. Engagement? Butchu was going to get married to someone. That's correct. Grafia replies. You've given your purity to your servant, Hyoudou Issei, and declared to me that you intend to remain with him. Do you still feel this way? Hearing that for the first time, Kiba glances at Issei, the young blonde momentarily grinning. I would give anything not to be your shoes, Issei-kun, Kiba thinks to himself. Will you remain with me? Issei asks, but Riaz and Grafia ignore the question. That's right. Riaz replies. I intend to remain with the White Dragon Emperor, Hyoudou Issei. Riaz affirms, calling him by a title rather than what he is. Well, White Dragon Emperor sounds much better than my servant or my pawn. Albion points out, Issei inwardly nodding. So Grafia replies slowly, her gaze shifting from Riaz to Issei, the young devil feeling like he's been caught with his hand in the cookie jar. It's true then. Grafia trailing Riaz doesn't allow the maid-clad devil to continue, instead speaking to draw Grafia's attention back to her. So, are you going to tell Rizer that our farce of an engagement is off, or will I get the pleasure? Riaz asks, and Grafia blinks in surprise, Riaz disdain for her fiancé clear in her tone. You know that it isn't that simple, Riaz. Grafia replies, and Riaz blinks, the air about her seeming to jolt in surprise. But you can't mean Riaz trails, fear and surprise mixing in her tone. Grafia raising her right arm, the silver-haired maid snaps her fingers, a magic circle appearing on the floor to her right. Allow me to introduce the third son of the Phoenix family and former fiancé to Riaz Gremory, Rizer Phoenix. Grafia explains, a burst of flame erupting from the magic circle. The man appears from the flame, dressed in a red suit with blonde hair and blue eyes. His shirt is open, showing a muscled chest. He looks like the epitome of a playboy. Looking at him, Issei feels a pang of jealousy. He's a handsome man, and Issei doesn't doubt for a moment that he enjoys more than his fair share of feminine attention. However, the look in Riaz's eyes, a glare that could melt tungsten, shows that Riaz is in no mood to appreciate any of Rizer's aesthetic qualities. Riaz practically spits his name. The flame-fading Rizer doesn't look any more pleased to see Riaz than Riaz is to see him. Where is that low-born son of a bitch? Rizer growls, and Issei feels the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. Why do I get the feeling that he's talking about me? Balling her hands into fists, Riaz doesn't give Issei the opportunity to answer. Rizer, you will not address a member of my family in that manner. Riaz replies, and Rizer finally looks at Riaz, his expression overflowing with disgust. You dare correct me, you dirty whore? Rizer asks, and Issei can practically taste the contempt in Rizer's voice. The young devil doesn't like it one bit. Balling his hands into fists, Issei is about to call out his sacred gear when Grafia speaks, her voice seeming to drop the temperature in the room to almost freezing. There will be no violence here. Grafia cuts in, both Riaz and Rizer, seeming to relax at Grafia's words. Anywhere Riaz begins, crossing her arms over her chest. Our engagement is over, Rizer, so go back to the underworld and find some other girl to add to your harem. Hearing the word harem, Issei's ears visibly twitch. Harem? This bastard has a harem? The question burning inside of Issei Rizer isn't cowed by Riaz's dismissal. I'll go back to the underworld after I kill that low-born bastard that took what was rightfully mine. Rizer replies, and Issei blinks, any thoughts of a harem disappearing with Rizer's retort. He's going to kill me. Is surprise clear on his face? Asia and Rainer both mirror the expression. Her mouth falling open. Riaz can't believe what she's just heard. You can't be serious. Riaz replies, and Rizer crosses his arms over his chest, his lips curling in a grin. I am. Rizer replies. As your fiancé, I am entitled to the pleasure of killing the bastard that you chose over me. Blinking, Issei feels like he's a deer in headlights. What? Issei blurts out, his fear plain in his voice, his eyes turning to Riaz. But what is he talking about? Rather than Ria's, Grafia is the one to answer. Ria-sama is the heir to one of the noble devil families. Grafia explains. As such, a fiancé was arranged for her. The point of this arrangement to continue the line of pure-blooded devils. As the heir to the Gremory family, Ria's virginity was very valuable to the other noble houses. Now that she has lost it by being with you, Riser-sama has the right to challenge you, the man who took his place. Why? Issei asks. What point would a death match even have? Simple, you low-born fool. Riser replies. If the man Rias chose to give her virginity to is weak, then I get the pleasure of killing him and showing just how far the Gremory family has fallen. If you're weak, then you don't deserve to father the next heir of a noble house. His mouth dropping open, Issei can't believe that he's going to have to fight in a death match. Then let me fight. Rias steps up, speaking to Grafia. I'm the one who seduced Issei. It isn't his fault and he had no idea. Listening to Ria's plea, Grafia slowly shakes her head no. I'm afraid that is unacceptable, Ria-sama. Grafia explains, Ria's opening her mouth to ask why when Grafia continues. Even without your purity you are still the heir of a noble house. Were you to die, we devils would be losing a pure-blooded devil. Were your servant to die, then all that is lost is a reincarnated devil. What about Riser? Rias asks, pointing toward him. If Issei kills him, the Phoenix clan will lose its third child. Unlike Uriasama, Riser-sama is not the heir to his clan. His loss will be far less impactful than yours. Her mouth hanging open, Rias can't believe what she's just heard. If Issei were to fight Riser in his current condition, Issei would lose. If Rias were the one to take him on, at least it would be a fair fight. That can't be. Yuma shakes her head in denial. I don't want Issei-sama to die. Asia nodding. Issei can feel her hands wrap around his arm possessively, Issei momentarily glancing toward Asia to see her leaning toward him, her fear at his death clear to him. Grafia blinking, she narrows her gaze toward Yuma. An enslaved fallen angel, Grafia trails, turning her gaze to Rias. I had no idea you had managed that. Yuma opening her mouth to clarify, Rias speaks, cutting her off. That doesn't matter. Rias replies. Having Issei participate in this madness is nothing more than a murder sentence. Grafia nodding, she isn't the least bit surprised at Ria's statement. That fact was not lost on Surzage-sama. Grafia explains to Rias. It has already been agreed that a 14-day training period will be allocated. 14 days? Rias asks, and Grafia nods. You will have 2 weeks to prepare your servant for the match. Grafia explains, and Rias turns to Riser. And you're alright with this? She asks, and Riser grins. As fun as a slaughter is, I would rather have a slight challenge when I kill that idiot. Riser explains, and Issei can't take it anymore. Oh yeah, you Yakitori bastard. Issei steps forward, pointing his finger toward Riser. I'll be the one to beat you into the ground. Riser's lips curling into a grin, he isn't the least bit afraid of Issei's threat. I hope you remember those words when I'm tearing your filthy heart out. Riser replies. I'm going to show it to you before I kill you. Sitting in the club room, Riser has since gone, Grafia herself disappearing shortly after Riser departed, leaving the occult research club to deal with problem currently placed before them. How can they make Hyoudou Issei strong enough to kill a member of the Phoenix clan in only 2 weeks? Even with divine dividing, Issei still doesn't have any means to actually kill Riser. Thanks to Riser's abilities, he can simply regenerate any strength lost to Issei's divide almost instantly. So while Issei might become stronger, it wouldn't put Riser into a position where Issei would be able to finish him off. But you? Issei asks, Ria's standing behind her desk, the red-haired devil looking down at the top of her desk until Issei speaks, the woman looking up at the sound of his voice. Standing in a loose circle are all the other members of the club, Asia, Kiba, Akeno, Kaneko, and Rainer. Issei. Rias begins slowly. Can you tell me about what happened when you defeated Rainer? Blinking, Issei is surprised by Ria's question. Standing on his left, Rainer, currently in her Yuma disguise, blinks as well, her eyes dropping to the floor at Ria's question, the fallen angel not sure whether to speak or not. Swallowing the saliva in his mouth, Issei lowers his eyes. You mean when that strange armor appeared? Issei asks, and Rias nods. Yes. Can you use that armor again? Rias asks, and Issei shrugs his shoulders. I don't know, Issei mumbles, momentarily glancing toward Yuma, his expression unsure. I wanted to protect Asia-chan and not die, it just sort of happened. Can you ask Albion? Rias asks, and Issei blinks. I'll try. I don't exactly know how to make him communicate with me, Issei trails, looking down toward the ground. Albion, are you there? Issei thinks to himself. Yeah partner, I'm here. Albion replies, and Issei blinks in surprise. Then can you tell me about that armor? Can I use it again? For a moment Albion doesn't reply to Issei's question. You can use the balance breaker whenever you want. Albion explains to Issei. However, there is a 120-second charge period. During those 120 seconds you cannot use the power of the sacred gear or fly using the sacred gear. After the 120 seconds you can safely wield the armor for 10 minutes. Well, when did all this happen? Issei can't believe what he's hearing. When you were with that red-haired devil your feelings exploded. They caused the sacred gear to respond and your powers to grow. Since you were otherwise occupied I suppressed the reaction and kept the balance breaker from manifesting. His cheeks turning red. Issei lowers his eyes, feeling unbelievably embarrassed about Albion just told him. I can't believe I got stronger by having sex with Butchu. Issei thinks to himself. What kind of sick pervert am I? You are a host unlike any other partner, Albion replies, Issei not sure what to say in response to that. Seeing her servants shift in mood, Rhea speaks slowly, the red-haired princess cocking her head to the side curiously. Issei? Rhea asks, the White Dragon Emperor suddenly remembering where he is and what he's doing. Right. Issei replies, looking up. Issei relays the information Albion just gave him to the rest of the club, Rhea's listening carefully as her pawn explains his current abilities. Issei chooses not to explain to Rhea and the other members of the club why he now has access to the balance breaker. 120 seconds. Rhea mumbles, Issei wondering what Rhea is thinking about. But you? Issei asks. Turning her attention back to him, Rhea speaks evenly. We have to work on that 2-minute charge time. Rhea explains. The rules of the match state you can't take any action toward your opponent until the match begins. If you were to break this rule, the Phoenix family could claim a violation and the consequences of that could be bad. Okay, so what are we going to do? Issei asks, and Rhea sighs. Tomorrow morning we're leaving for a training camp. Rhea explains. I'll take care of your parents and school, so all you have to worry about is preparing and training. Okay, Issei trails, not sure what else to say. Alright then. Rhea says, dismissing them. Walking back to his house with Asia and Yuma, Issei carries his bag over his left shoulder in his left hand, his right hand in his pocket, Issei not sure what is going to happen in the coming 2 weeks. Walking down the sidewalk, neither Yuma nor Asia knows what to say to Issei. Both of them realize that a lot has suddenly been placed on his shoulders and both of them only want to help him succeed, but neither of them knows how to accomplish that. On their way out, Rhea had said that both Rainer and Asia would be coming on the training trip, explaining that every member of the club would be required to attend and each member will have a part to play. With no other explanation, they'd been dismissed and they'd filed out of the club room. Left with his thoughts, Issei fixates on the last major event of his life, the same thing that has been sitting in the back of his mind since he'd woken up that morning. But you and I had sex, she gave her first time to me and I got to see everything. The memory of what happened is engraved into Issei's mind, the image of Rhea's on top of him forever burned into his brain. Yet she did it because she wanted to break off her engagement to Riser. She said that what I want won't take much. She could have just as easily gone to Pretty Boy and gotten him to do it. She probably only came to me first because she thought that I wouldn't put up a fight, well, Pretty Boy probably would have resisted and Grafia would have gotten there before anything could happen. Feeling like he's learned the truth behind what happened between him and Rhea, Issei can't help but frown. He cares about Rhea, in spite of the fact that she isn't human, she is still beautiful and kind. She has great breasts and doesn't hesitate to let him see them or even touch them. She also allowed Asia and Rainer to join in on what they were doing and didn't seem the least bit angry about the other 2 women joining in. Since then, neither Issei, Rhea, Asia or Rainer has spoken about what happened and Issei doesn't know how to broach the subject with any of the 3 women. Yeah, like I can just say, hey, can we talk about the foursome we had last night? What am I going to say? Are you alright, Issei-sama? Yuma asks and Issei quickly looks away from her. I'm fine, Issei mumbles, not sure how to react to her. Every time he hears her voice, the memory of her killing him comes back to him, her words faint in his mind. Will you die for me? Shaking his head to clear it, Issei keeps his eyes forward, Yuma slowing her pace, falling behind Issei, Asia walking behind him with her gaze locked on him, her concern etched across her features like a billboard. Issei-san. Lying on his bed, Issei tries not to think about what happened on this bed the night before, the young devil sticking his right hand out, his fingers open wide. In 2 weeks I'm going to have to fight in a battle to the death with that Yakitori bastard. As you are now, you can't defeat that man. Albion explains to him. If his powers are as that red-haired devil explained, then you will likely die before being able to activate the scale mail. Frowning, Issei lowers his hand, sighing heavily. Gee, that's encouraging. It's direction, partner. Albion responds. During the next 14 days you should focus on not only increasing your strength, but also your speed. If you can manage to avoid his attacks and not get killed by him for the duration of the countdown, then you'll be able to create the armor. So once I get the balance breaker activated, I'll be able to win. Not exactly. Albion replies. The armor will allow you to fight on an even level with him, and it will allow you to drain his strength away quickly, but you still need some way to prevent him from regenerating. Closing his eyes, Issei sighs again. Then I'll just have to figure something out. The next morning Issei finds himself slowly climbing up a hill, a heavy backpack resting on his back, Issei feeling like several hundred pounds of weight rest on his shoulders. At the top of the hill Asia, Rainer and Riaz all stare down at him. Are you sure we can't help? Asia asks, and Riaz shakes her head no. No, this will be good training for him. If he can't handle that much, then he seriously needs work. Riaz replies. Are you kidding me? Issei demands, feeling like the butt of a cruel joke. No one could climb up a mountain trail wearing this kind of weight. As if on cue Kaneko comes walking past him, her pace twice what his is, and her bag is 3 times the size of the one he's carrying. Watching her walk by, Kiba is close behind, the blonde-haired knight smiling innocently. You've got to be freaking kidding me. Alright, Issei as begins, the red-haired devil now wearing a tracksuit, Akeno standing next to her wearing similar attire. Only Akeno carries a black riding crop, Issei not sure why Akeno is holding such an implement. Breathing heavily, Issei feels like he's just gotten away from a group of irate girls after he's been caught peeping. Unfortunately for Issei, he hasn't been peeping. Every morning you're going to run around the perimeter of this property, which is a 3-mile run. Riaz explains to him. To push you, you're going to be timed. Every time you run you will be motivated to run faster. That is where Akeno comes in. Huh? Issei asks, Akeno giggling. If I think you're not running your best, then I get to hit you with this whip, Akeno explains, grasping the top of the implement and pulling it back before releasing it, allowing the item to whip forward. Are you kidding me? The color draining from his face, disbelief plays across Issei's features. But are you serious? Issei asks, and Riaz nods. These next 2 weeks the only thing that will give you a chance of surviving the duel. Riaz explains to him. If that means being a little cruel so that my servant survives, then so be it. Riaz explains to him. Now start running. Blinking, Issei opens his mouth to ask a question, Akeno moving behind him and using the whip. Crack. The implement striking Issei's rear, the young devil yelps in surprise, jumping in surprise at the impact. You aren't running, Akeno trails, and Issei swallows, deciding that his questions can wait for later before taking off at a run, both Riaz and Akeno falling into step behind him. Arriving back at the main house on the property, Issei falls into a slump, his legs feeling like they're on fire. Behind him both Akeno and Riaz come to a stop, Issei lying on his stomach with his face in the dirt, his arms and legs splayed. Hitting the button on her stopwatch, Riaz mentally notes the time. So tired, Issei mumbles. Footsteps light against the dirt. Both Asia and Rainer approach, the 3 of them, the fallen angel in her true form, the house and the surrounding property, owned by the Gremory family and encased in a barrier, so there is no need for Rainer to utilize a disguise. Unlike Rainer, Asia still wears the Kuo Academy uniform, the blonde former sister kneeling down near Issei's legs, her sacred gear appearing on her fingers, green light suffusing Issei's legs. Approaching Issei's head, Rainer holds a sport drink in her right hand, the dark-haired buxom fallen angel kneeling down to offer it to him. Here, Issei-sama, drink this, Rainer offers, Issei blinking in surprise at the change in her voice, his head popping up to see her in her true form, his eyes going wide in momentary shock, before his brain registers the pain in his legs fading. Issei mutters, looking over his shoulder to see Asia healing him. Once you've gotten something to drink and Asia has finished healing you, we're going to continue your training. Riaz explains, Issei's head spinning around toward her, his surprise clear on his features. More running? Issei asks, and Riaz shakes her head no, her crimson hair swaying with emotion. We're going to teach you about magic and try to improve your skills with it. Even if you only know a few of the basics during the duel, it may be the difference between living and dying, and if your skill in magic improves, it will hopefully also reduce the countdown on your balance breaker. Riaz explains, Issei sighing at her words. Great, I get 2 weeks off from school only to have to sit through different classes instead. Reaching out and taking the sport drink from Rainer, Issei puts the bottle to his lips, downing the contents quickly. Thank you, Issei offers, handing the now empty bottle back to Rainer, the fallen angel accepting the bottle. It was my pleasure, Issei-sama. Hearing her voice, Issei feels a twinge of discomfort. With Yuma, he at least has the memories of their day together, so he doesn't associate the sound of her voice with anything negative. With her current tone and appearance, Issei can't help but remember what she'd said right before she tried to kill him. Won't you die for me? Closing his eyes, Issei forces the memory away, telling himself he can think about it later as the green light from Asia's sacred gear fades. All done, Asia reports, Issei getting to his feet as Asia stands. Fortunately, Issei's legs no longer feel like they're on fire, but they do still feel tired. Asia can heal the pain in his muscles, but she can't recover his stamina. Now then onto class, Riaz explains, Issei momentarily sighing before starting after Riaz. Holding a potato, Issei's face is contorted in concentration, the young devil trying to peel the potato using demonic power and finding the task to be much more difficult than he thought. After leading he and Asia to the kitchen, both Riaz and Rainer had departed, leaving Issei and Asia alone with Akeno. She then explained how devils use demonic power and gave them their assignment. They would each peel a large bowl full of potatoes without using any tools. Unfortunately for Issei, Asia picked it up rather easily, peeling her potatoes with ease, while Issei has been unable to get even one done. Standing there with her hands balled into fists in front of her, Asia does her best to try and cheer him on. "You can do it, Issei-san." Asia offers warmly, Issei grinning at her innocent, cheerful demeanor. It's hard for him to imagine that he's been intimate with her. To him that whole night sort of feels like a dream. The only thing that tells him that it isn't is the fact that he has to fight and kill a blonde man that he's never met before in just under 2 weeks. Staring at the potato, Issei tries to envision the potato peeling itself, trying to draw the image of it happening in his mind. His face falling gently into the counter in front of him, Issei sighs heavily. Next to his head sits a large bowl filled with unpeeled potatoes, Issei unable to even strip one when it only took Asia roughly an hour to get the hang of it. Akeno had explained that Asia has almost as much magical talent as her, so it wasn't a big deal that she picked it up so easily. "Man, I'm worthless," Issei mutters, feeling like an abject failure for being unable to master such a supposedly simple concept. Akeno's voice reaches his ears. "Don't worry about it too much, Issei-kun." Akeno tries to assuage him. "I don't know why it's so hard," Issei mumbles, lifting his head. Rather than imagining the potato being peeled, why not imagine a woman being stripped? Akeno asks, and Issei blinks in surprise. "Will that work?" he asks, his interest piqued. "If you fu, it's the same basic principle, so it should." Akeno explains, and Issei picks up his potato, staring at it, his face contorting in concentration once again. Rather than imagine the potato being peeled, Issei imagines Riaz in her school uniform and then the uniform being ripped away. The skin on the potato suddenly flies away, revealing a clean white surface. The image of Riaz disappearing from his mind with a sudden reaction, Issei feeling a burst of joy at peeling the potato. "You did it, Issei-san." Asia praises him, her voice jubilant. Congratulations." Akeno praises him. Clutching the now peeled potato, Issei's mind begins to churn. "I bet I could create a move where I peel a woman's clothes off just by touching her. That would be so awesome." The thought of actually being able to make women naked just by touching them gets Issei's libido running. Unfortunately though, Issei isn't allowed to pursue that thought. At that moment the door to the kitchen opens and Riaz walks in, the red-haired Grimoire heir is still wearing a tracksuit. "Oh, did you manage to finally peel a potato, Issei?" Riaz asks, and Issei nods. "Of course." Issei agrees, still clutching the potato. Grinning, Riaz is quietly glad that her only pawn has begun to learn to use his demonic powers. "Well, since you've passed this lesson, let's move on to the afternoon run," Riaz says, and Issei's face falls, the potato falling from his fingers. "Afternoon run?" Issei asks, and Riaz nods, Issei feeling like the butt of a bad joke. "Not again." Coming to a stop in front of the manor, Issei drops to his hands and knees, Asia and Rainer both waiting from him, just like that morning. Behind him Akeno smiles, holding the whip while Riaz stops her stopwatch. "Believe it or not, Issei, you were able to shave 10 seconds off your record from this morning." Riaz explains to him, Issei swallowing the saliva in his mouth and massive gulps of air as Asia begins her treatment. "Obviously." Issei gripes. "Akeno-senpai wouldn't stop whipping me." "If you fu," Akeno giggles, clearly enjoying what she'd been doing. "I have to do my best for my precious junior." Kneeling down, Rainer offers Issei a sport drink to help him rehydrate. "Thank you," Issei offers breathlessly, grabbing the bottle from her hand and bringing it to his lips, gulping the thankfully cold liquid down. "Good job today, Issei." Riaz praises him as he drinks the liquid. "Asia, Akeno, we're going to start on dinner once you're done." "Yes, but you." Asia agrees, nodding her head as Akeno smiles. "Of course, but you." Akeno agrees. After a few moments the light fades and Asia stands, Issei flopping onto his back, still feeling exhausted from the run as 3 of the 4 women start to walk away. "Dinner will be in an hour, Issei, don't make me send Akeno to come get you." Riaz calls out, Akeno chiming in. I'll have to bring my whip." Just the thought of it flushes the color from Issei's face, the 3 of them walking away as Rainer remains. For a moment neither speaks, Issei choosing to instead focus on inhaling massive amounts of oxygen to try and fill his lungs, while Rainer doesn't know how to say what she wants to say. Issei saw Rainer finally breaks her silence, Issei looking up at her. "What is it?" Issei asks, the young devil not sure what his enslaved fallen angel could want. "Do you not approve of me when I look like this?" Rainer asks, and Issei blinks, his gaze shifting away from her. That's, he mumbles, not sure what to say in response to that. Pushing himself to a sitting position, Issei sighs, feeling tired, both physically and emotionally. After Grafia left his bedroom, both Asia and Rainer had entered his bedroom and ultimately ended up sleeping with him. They'd both been eager and he'd just sort of gone along with the moment, Issei not sure what to think about the two of them literally taking turns with Rias. Issei-sama? Rainer asks, feeling insecure at her master's silence. How am I supposed to feel about you? Issei finally asks, and Rainer blinks in surprise at the question. I don't know how to answer that. Rainer replies, and Issei pushes himself to his feet. Are you attracted to me? Issei asks quietly, and Rainer cocks her head to side. Attracted to you? Rainer asks, and Issei nods, not looking at the fallen angel standing next to him. Rainer mutters, her gaze falling to the ground. Whenever I think of you, I remember that I'm only alive because of you. But I also remember the way you speak to me in class, how you help me to adjust to my new life even though you don't have to. So Issei begins slowly, his voice low. You slept with me because of that. Rainer looking at him a moment. Issei doesn't know what the female fallen angel is going to say in response to his question. I slept with you because I want you to be happy, Issei-sama. Rainer replies. Blinking, Issei swallows, a part of him expecting that answer. What did you think she was going to say? I slept with you because I think you're incredibly sexy and I can't even look at you without wanting to rip your pants off and take you then and there. You're right, as if Kiba might get that kind of response, but not me. I guess I can accept that, Issei sighs, slipping his hands into his pockets. Though I need to start working on a new move. New move? Rainer asks curiously. Yeah, Issei begins, glad for the change in subject. I was thinking of creating a technique where I use my demonic power to strip a girl's clothes and leave her naked. For a moment Rainer doesn't say anything. Then why not try to see through their clothes instead? Rainer offers, and Issei blinks in surprise. Is that possible? Issei asks, turning his head toward her, his shock at her suggestion clear on his features. I believe so. Rainer nods at Issei's question. After all, the base for a devil's demonic power is just envisioning what you want to happen. If you work at it long enough, you should have no problem creating a technique that allows you to see through women's clothing. Then I could peep at girls by just walking down the hall. I could look at breasts all day without ever getting pummeled for it. No more being chased by angry girls after getting caught for peeking. His desire to create the technique rising, a familiar voice wafts into Issei's ears. I've never had a partner so obsessed with breasts. Approaching Issei's door, Ria's Gremory carefully reaches out, slowly turning the knob and ever so carefully opening the door to Issei's bedroom. Before the trip, Rias had explained to Rainer, Asia, and most especially Akeno, that none of them were to try and sneak into Issei's bedroom for any reason. This trip is far too important to distract Issei with anything. That said, it is currently around midnight, the devil's jobs temporarily suspended for the duration of this training trip. Pushing the door open, Rias wears the cool uniform, Rias taking in the sight of Issei lying on his back in a white tank top and black boxer shorts, his mouth slightly open, Issei's arms sticking out, his blankets pulled down and only partially covering him. Walking to his bedside, Rias isn't there to try and seduce Issei, her purpose on this night quite different than the first time she came to Issei's bedroom alone at night. Albion-sama, Rias calls out carefully, trying to keep her voice low. Issei wordlessly groans, rolling over on his left side, putting his back toward Rias. The red-haired devil momentarily silent, Rias wants to try and communicate with the heavenly dragon, sealed inside Issei's sacred gear. The purpose of this trip is to increase Issei's ability with the sacred gear, most importantly the balance breaker. In order to do that, Rias has to know what causes Issei's growth with the sacred gear. Albion-sama, Rias calls out again, hoping that the heavenly dragon will answer her. Issei rolling onto his stomach, Rias is about to turn away when the light wings appear on his back, a strange voice coming from the wings. What do you want? The voice asks, Rias momentarily blinking in surprise. That's the voice of the vanishing dragon. Rias begins. I want to ask you a question, if I can. About the armor? Albion replies, seemingly reading Ria's mind. Yes, Rias replies. I'm afraid that without it Issei won't survive his duel against Riser. How can I reduce the countdown time Issei has to wait through? His greatest growth occurred when he was carnal with you and the other two. Albion explains to her. So I should have sex with him again? Rias asks. That may help, though I can't guarantee anything. I've never had a partner like him before. Nodding, Rias doesn't have any other questions, the red-haired devil silent for several moments, the sacred gear disappearing from Issei's back. The greatest growth occurred when he was with me, Asia and Rainer for the first time. Turning toward the door, Riaz walks back to the hall, stepping out into the hall and closing the door behind her. The heiress to the Gremory family suddenly left with a lot to think about. How can I increase his ability with the sacred gear? I don't want him to die. Walking back to her bedroom, Riaz continues to contemplate that question, a part of her wishing that Issei weren't so eccentric. If he weren't, Albion would probably be able to tell her how to increase his ability with the sacred gear. The power a sacred gear releases is controlled by the wielder's feelings, so. Not sure what to do, Riaz opens the door to her own bedroom, closing the door behind her. Lying on her bed in a black nightgown, Riaz Gremory can't bring herself to fall asleep. Putting her head down to go to bed, Riaz had gone to sleep for a bit, but she dreamed a nightmare where she saw her eyes are burning Issei alive, Issei's screams knocking her awake. She could almost smell his burning flesh in the dream, and she can still vividly see and hear Issei burning alive. Needless to say, Riaz wouldn't be getting any sleep anytime soon. Knock, knock. Riaz? Akeno's voice carries, Riaz Gremory sitting up, calling out to her queen. Come in. Riaz calls out. The door opening, Akeno stands in the doorway, Riaz queen dressed in a pair of dark pajamas with her hair down, the buxom woman walking into Riaz bedroom, closing the door behind her. Something bothering you, Akeno? Riaz asks, and Akeno looks away from her friend. I'm worried about Issei-kun, Akeno explains, and Riaz sighs. I am too. Riaz agrees. Walking to Riaz's bed, Akeno sits on the edge of the bed, her eyes drawn to the open window in Riaz's bedroom and the starry sky beyond. Will these 2 weeks be enough? Akeno asks. Can we make him stronger than Rizer-san? Her eyes shifting to Riaz, the red-haired devil lowers her eyes to the blankets covering her legs. I hope so. Riaz replies quietly. He's the White Dragon Emperor, but I'm afraid that not even the power of a heavenly dragon will be enough. Can we do anything more? Akeno asks. We're pushing him about as hard as we can. Sitting there, Riaz remembers what Albion told her before she'd left Issei's bedroom. His greatest growth occurred when he was carnal with you, and the other two, maybe Issei's power will grow if he experiences things he's never felt before. Actually, there's something we might be able to do. End of the part 2 here. So that's it for today's video, guys. Before you go, just like the video and share it with your friends. Bye.